What we need is not more medication, but more education, because the best prescription is knowledge. This is Exposé coming to you live from Lagos, Nigeria, every Monday on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook simultaneously. And I'm your regular host, Tony Akinyemi. Don't forget, what we need is not more medication, but more education, because the best prescription is knowledge. Hello and welcome to Exposé with Tony Akinyemi today. I'm your regular host, as you very well know, and this is brought to you by the Shepherd's Flock International Church. We are going to be continuing in our conversation on defeating diabetes. We have had several episodes, and in the last episode, my daughter and I actually discussed some of the factors that are like risk factors that predispose people to developing diabetes. We've looked at nutritional factors, we've looked at lifestyle factors, and we also considered other factors such as heredity, race, and particularly we looked at how certain drugs can actually induce diabetes, and we call them diabetogenic drugs. In other words, if you are on medications, pharmaceutical drugs, for whatever condition you are being treated for, one of the things you need to do is to read the fine prints in the labels, in the inserts, so that you know whether the drug you are on long term is one of those drugs that can actually induce diabetes. Okay? Because if the drug you are on long-term is capable of inducing diabetes, then it becomes important for you to review that so that you don't become a diabetic patient. Such drugs include, several categories of drugs, like steroids is one of those categories. There are several drugs under that category. We have statins. Those are cholesterol-lowering drugs. Quite a number of them in that category as well. We have thiazide diuretics, which are drugs also used to treat hypertension, and they end up inviting diabetes along the way. So somebody starts out with a diagnosis of hypertension, and that person is being treated, and then the drugs that person is taking over 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road now produces diabetes. Then we have a fourth category, beta blockers. These are also antihypertensive drugs. And then we have atypical antipsychotics, which can also induce diabetes, certain antibiotics as well. So you need to review your medication with your physician if it is one of those contributing factors to diabetes. Today I have in the house with me again my daughter, who is a medical doctor, Dr. Melody Akinyemi.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon.
You're welcome.
Good evening.
Whatever idea is need. Some people are seeing us in the afternoon where they are. Some are seeing us in the morning. Some are seeing us in the evening. So whatever applies to you, just take it. We welcome you to this Monday evening in Nigeria, episode of Exposé, where we unveil, reveal, and we discuss very pertinent subjects relating to our wellness, our health, our well-being. Okay, so we're going to continue from where we left off the last time. We touched on the medications, the drugs that conventional medical science uses in treating, or as they use in medical language, in managing diabetes. I told you earlier in some of the previous episodes that there are 3 scenarios that can play out. There are 3 models. We have disease prevention model, we have disease reversal model, and we have disease management model. In the disease prevention model, you want to preempt You want to do stuff to prevent the disease from happening. That's the best model. If there are things I can do in order not to become diabetic, why not begin to do it now? So I don't ever get diagnosed with diabetes at all. And then if I am already diagnosed with diabetes, are there things I can do to reverse the diabetes? That's why we're going to be presenting to you subsequently our 10-point agenda as enunciated in our book, Defeating Diabetes. Then the third one is, okay, I don't believe this disease can be reversed, but I can coexist with the disease side by side till the end of my life. I will just be taking my medication and all of that. And that's called the disease management model. We looked at the different medications, pharmaceuticals, that conventional medical science uses in the management of diabetes. We call it management because those pharmaceuticals never reverse diabetes. I am yet to come across one diabetic patient who was treated with those medications, maybe after 6 months, is no longer diabetic. Because those drugs are not designed to reverse diabetes, they are designed to manage diabetes, control blood sugar, prevent certain complications, so the person can successfully cohabit and coexist with their diabetes until when they finally pass on. Now, Dr. Melody Akinyemi, that is, analyzed to us the various categories of medications that are used in treating diabetes that way, conventional medicine. Is also articulated in a whole chapter in our book, Defeating Diabetes. But there is one more that we need to touch upon, particularly as it affects type 1 diabetics and a few others in the type 2 category that may also require the support of this particular substance. It's called insulin. All right. Of course, you know that our bodies produce insulin to help our sugar management mechanism, but sometimes the body doesn't produce enough insulin, and that's the reason for certain types of diabetes, or the body doesn't produce insulin at all, which may be the reason for type 1 diabetes. And then in some cases, the body produces insulin, but the body is resistant to the action of insulin. Okay, the insulin receptors on the cells are not responding well to the action of insulin. So some people need to now get insulin externally from the outside into the body. They can't rely anymore on the one that their bodies, are producing. So insulin becomes one of those things that medical scientists use in the management of certain types of diabetes. So let me ask you, Dr. Melody, what categories of diabetic patients will require insulin as part of the remedies or the therapeutics that they would need to address their condition?
Okay, so first of all, type 1 diabetes, I think that's clear because they are dependent on insulin. They cannot produce insulin, so they need insulin from an external source. The next to be people with gestational diabetes, those that develop diabetes as a result of pregnancy.
Okay.
And that's largely because they cannot use most of the medications that are being prescribed normally during pregnancy.
Okay.
And then the fact that insulin actually works better than most of the other medications in lowering the blood sugar. And then we don't want any situation whereby the sugar is up so that it doesn't affect
the fetus
inside the woman. So that's 2. Then 3, there's some people who have type 2 diabetes who have probably been on medications for a while. They've developed resistance to those medications and are no longer responding to those medications. And so the last option would be to place them on insulin. So there are 3 categories of people that are typically on insulin.
Okay, great. So insulin will help. They will depend on insulin to lower their blood sugar.
Yes.
Right. So we have 3 categories there. Those who are type 1 diabetics, and then gestational diabetics, those who develop diabetes during pregnancy. You don't want to give certain drugs to them because of the baby. You don't want to affect the baby. So you help them lower their blood sugar using insulin. And then those who have been using drugs to control their blood sugar for long, and now their bodies have habituated, as it were. It no longer responds to those drugs. And their sugar must come down by all means. So they now end up with insulin finally at the end of the day, even though they are still type 2.
Type 2, yes.
They are not type 1. Okay. So those are the categories. Now, would you like to tell us the different types of insulin? Are they injectables? Are they oral tablets? And then what are the different categorizations of insulin?
Well, insulin is only taken by injection. It's not oral. There's no.
I thought that I heard from somebody, I don't know my source, that there are some oral tablets that they could take also. I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Because where you need insulin is in the blood.
Okay.
So they give it subcutaneously under the skin, and then it's slowly absorbed into the bloodstream.
Okay.
Through that, yes. There are 4 types of insulin, not types like, we have type A, type B, but types in the sense of how they are able to perform
the way they act on the body.
The way they act on the body.
Okay.
So we have the rapid acting or the short acting insulin. Those ones are the ones that within 30 minutes to an hour maximum, their action or their effect is felt.
Okay.
So typically, if a patient comes into the clinic, blood sugar is through the roof, you're trying to crash it. That's the kind of insulin you give the person. So you can give it hourly, you can give it 4 hourly, depending on how fast you want to crash blood sugar.
Rapid acting insulin. Okay.
It clears it quickly.
Within an hour or so.
Less than that.
Or less than an hour.
Yes.
Okay.
Then the next will be the intermediate acting insulin.
Okay.
That works for a longer period of time. So sometimes the effects can last for as long as 6 hours, 8 hours, depending on the constituency of the insulin. So they're usually attached to binders that keep them in the bloodstream for a longer period of time. Then we have the mixed or the regular insulin, the one that most diabetics that move about with their pens have.
Okay.
So the mixed insulin is actually, or the regular one, is the mixture of the short acting and the intermediate acting.
Okay.
So the idea is you don't want them to be taking insulin, you don't want them to give themselves shots frequently.
Yeah.
So if you take one in the morning, that will probably cover for breakfast, and a longer one that will cover for during the day and lunch. And then maybe another one in the evening that will cover for your dinner, and then through the night till the next morning. So it's usually a mixture of the two. And then we have long-acting insulin. Those ones the effects can last for up to 24 hours, sometimes, or even more, depending on the constituency. So for the long-acting insulin, you can use them for probably older clients or people who have, or in combination with other forms of insulin, people who have really difficult blood sugar levels to control. So you can give them the long-acting one to take for the entire day, and then they're still taking either the short-acting or the mixed ones during the day to support.
So one clear thing that we have heard today is that all insulins are not exactly the same in their action, the way they act on the body. Some are just plain insulin that act quickly. Some they have added binders to them to kind of help them stay longer in the bloodstream and have a kind of slow release action, long-term release action, and what have you. Great. Now, we also have seen people who started injecting themselves with insulin and they find themselves falling into low blood sugar, extremely low blood sugar level, hypoglycemia, which is one of those things that can occur. We can call them side effects, of insulin. Now, would you like to highlight also different types, or what are the scenarios that can play out in the life of somebody who is using insulin to control their blood sugar?
Well, starting with hypoglycemia, that's probably the commonest side effect of using insulin, because of, especially if you're using the short-acting insulin or any insulin that contains the short-acting one, and you haven't eaten, or even the intermediate release. So the insulin is in the blood, you're not replenishing the glucose, it's not allowing the body to produce glucose because it's inhibiting the other hormones. And so if you don't eat, that's why you find such people having to eat at
quite often.
Periods. If not, you can go into hypoglycemia. Or you can even be on your regular, or some people overdose mistakenly on their insulin, or you can be on your regular insulin, but maybe due to renal impairments, so you're not clearing out the insulin as
from your system.
So it's accumulating the system, and then suddenly the
blood sugar will just drop
in blood sugar. So that's one common side effect that you see with the use of insulin. But there are other side effects with insulin use. Another common one will be resistance. So typically, after a while, you have to keep increasing the
dosage.
Because, just like, even especially if it's type 2 diabetes, just like in the beginning, they had issues with insulin resistance. So whether the insulin is coming from the body or it's coming from an external source,
the body will still continue to get used to it and resist.
To it. Then another thing will be injection site problems. So because you're injecting yourself, there's you can have lipomas develop there, you can have infections, you can have redness, you can have swelling, the pain, discomfort. And because of this particular side effect, you find some people even not being compliant with their, because it's not easy.
Yeah, to be poking yourself, on a daily basis.
Every time. You could also have dents in the skin because of the solution. It can dissolve or digest some things in the area. So sometimes they have dents and some other funny, not so palatable side effects.
Well, thank you very much. So some people may need to continue to use insulin, but the good thing is that by the time we deploy our 10-point agenda that covers every aspect of diabetes control and reversal, even those who are on insulin will ultimately be able to reduce the dose of the insulin that they are using, because now their insulin sensitivity will be much sharper than before they embarked on the 10-point agenda. When people go into hypoglycemia, there are certain signs, certain symptoms. When we go on this short break and come back, I want you to spend 30 seconds or thereabouts to just highlight some of the side effects, some of the symptoms, some of the things that show when somebody is in hypo, so that people are aware. Some people go into hypo, they don't even know what is happening. They just see themselves passing out and they are wondering, what is this happening to me? And they don't know. So we'll go on this short break. When we are back, we will look at hypo, the symptoms of hypoglycemia. And thereafter, we're going to continue with the causes of hypoglycemia. Don't go away. You can actually reverse diabetes. When you understand diabetes, you understand what it is, you understand how it happens, the risk factors, the causes, and the complications that it can give rise to. Those who already have it, to start putting measures in place to reverse it, or at the very least, to control it. My daughter is a medical doctor and I am a nutritionist. We co-authored Defeating Diabetes Naturally. You will find it on Amazon.com, and you can also buy hard copies from our bookshop, the Shepherd Stores Limited, on number 18 Shogunde Street, Abule Onibagbo, Ikeja, Lagos, Nigeria. Welcome back. This is Exposé, brought to you by the Shepherd's Flock International Church. And I'm your regular host, Tony Akinyemi is my name. I have with me in the studios today discussing Defeating Diabetes, Dr. Melody Akinyemi. And we've looked at insulin, the different types of insulin, the action of insulin on the body. We've looked at some of the side effects that the regular use of insulin may effect in the body. And then we want to look now at hypoglycemia. First of all, by way of helping those who are not particularly scientifically oriented, what is hypoglycemia?
Low blood sugar.
Low blood sugar, good. And if a person has hypoglycemia or low blood sugar, what are some of the symptoms the person can experience?
Okay, so for hypoglycemia, there are different stages. There's a mild, moderate, severe, and different stages have different symptoms that characterize them. So I'll quickly run through them. For mild hypoglycemia, I think the commonest symptom would be the feeling of hunger, headache, a bit of restlessness. You know, that thing that makes all of us want to stand up and look for food to eat. That would be mild. For moderate, it's a bit more severe. Person would lose focus, concentration. You could have palpitations. You could start sweating.
What is palpitation?
When you feel your heart beating. You just suddenly feel like your heart is beating. Like
racing, running away.
Yeah, so you could have all of that. If at that point you refuse to respond to your body's call by either slowing down your activity or getting something to eat, you can move on to the next step, which is a bit more severe and it's actually life-threatening. For children, they could go into seizures, they start having seizures.
Okay.
Even some adults could have it, but commonly the person just starts having tunnel vision. So tunnel vision is you suddenly realize that you cannot see everything on your side again. All you're just seeing is
in front
of you.
I experienced it in my 20s, I was going on a long fast. I was drinking only water. And it got to a point where I was standing, I was conscious, but I just blanked out. Everywhere was black. I couldn't see anything anymore. And then after a few seconds, it cleared again, And then I became sweaty. Sweat covered me all over the place. I quickly went to take some pap. We call it pap in this part of the world, OD.
Yes, right. And then you could lose consciousness.
Okay.
So that's the climax of it, loss of consciousness. But the issue with diabetics is, especially if the person has had diabetes for a long period of time, because it affects your nerves, it also affects the autonomic nervous system, which is the system that is responsible for all of these symptoms and signs that you should get something to eat. So a lot of them do not realize they're hypoglycemic until they're getting towards the severe stage where, you either start twitching seriously, or you blank out, or you feel lightheaded, or you lose consciousness.
Right.
A few of them might have some of the intermediate or moderate signs like palpitations and what have you. So, but you still need to be wary of those signs.
Yeah, look out for them, and take immediate action before it goes into something more serious. Okay, so apart from injecting oneself with insulin or taking anti-diabetic drugs that can force down a person's blood sugar, what are the other things that can cause blood sugar to go very low, even for those who are not diabetic?
Exercise. Too much exercise. I think that's the commonest.
What degree of exercise is too much?
So I go to a gym, and on the equipment they always put there, if you start feeling an arising or you start feeling woozy, just stop whatever it is you are doing and go and look for something to eat. Like, boldly written.
Right.
So too much exercise will be if you're exercising beyond your body's ability to everybody has their own stretch. I'm not going to say I want to run from here to where can I want to run 15 kilometers. I'll probably collapse halfway because
you've not been doing that before.
I've not been.
If you've been a long distance runner,
yes.
And you have accustomed and acclimatized,
so
it's okay.
Build. That's another thing. Exercise. It has to build up your fitness level
and stamina. Don't
say because you go to the gym and you saw somebody running for 60 minutes straight, if you want to get on the treadmill and run, you will pass out within 10 minutes. So too much exercise, or you want to carry weights. Those that carry weights, some people, because when you're carrying weights, you don't sweat as much, so you don't realize you're burning a lot of calories, and you're using up a lot of glucose. We talked about it in the last episode where we said that another cheat way to drop your blood glucose level is to do exercise. So you're doing the exercise, your blood glucose level is dropping, and if you're not replenishing, like sometimes you say maybe you should have like a snack before you start, a light snack, like maybe one banana, just to keep the glucose level going, or you should have like a fruit drink or something that you're taking in between to replenish your. And also, yes, that's it about exercise. I can't really say, if you exercise for 50 years or 50 minutes, you go into hypoglycemia, but you should understand your body, understand those signs, and don't push yourself beyond what your body can take at that point in time. And that thing will be, I think we talked about insulin, yes.
Yeah, we talked about insulin. What about starvation?
Yes, we talked about it when you were fasting. That's a given.
And let me come to one of my constituencies here again. I have three major constituencies. I am an engineer, that's one constituency. I am a theologian, a pastor, that's another constituency. And then I'm a nutritionist, that's another constituency. Now let me come to the pastoral constituency. Because my colleagues, pastors, we fast a lot, And unfortunately, we've lost a few pastors, through fasting, because they didn't understand how to listen to their body. When the body begins to give them signals that, look, your blood sugar is dropping too low, or your BP is dropping too low, or something like that, so that they know precisely the action to take. I cited my own example. I was in my 20s. I was a young man. I just left university. And I wanted to serve God. And I wanted, to see great results in my ministry and all of that. And I went on a long fast, dry fast. Well, maybe not dry. I was drinking water, but I wasn't eating. Day 1, day 2, I wanted to go for 7 days at that time. No food at all, just drinking water. And because I wanted to be anointed. And I wanted to see miracles, signs, and wonders, of course, which is a good thing because the Bible says, these signs shall follow them that believe. But it's not by power, nor by might. Of course, fasting is important. It has its place. And in fact, it will also be therapeutic.
Yes.
Right. But then you have to understand, and we are all different. Because somebody, maybe your colleague pastor, fasted for 40 days, drinking only water, and nothing happened to him, and you don't know his fitness level, and you too say, hey, I'm going to embark on a 40-day fast. Before you know it, your obituary could be out. So we need to watch that aspect, the starvation aspect, particularly as we get older.
Yes.
Okay? I'm in my 60s now. I am not going to embark on the same type of long fast I used to do in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. I still fast, but I am beginning to recognize that my threshold is no longer as it was in those days. So I can't cope for as long as I used to. So I have to do it now with wisdom, with discretion. That's very important. So you don't enter into that starvation zone where you begin to feel hypoglycemic, and then you can experience all those symptoms, and it could even become fatal. All right, so that is as far as insulin and hypoglycemia are concerned. Now we're going to go into our 10-point agenda, the 10-point agenda that we have in our book, Defeating Diabetes. We have set out certain goals that we wanted to achieve with that agenda. We want to see that if you implement this agenda, these are the different goals that we are going to achieve at the end of the day, both for those who are not diabetic and for those who are diabetic. I said the other time in one of the previous episodes that if the diet that a diabetic patient is following to help control his blood sugar is followed by a non-diabetic patient, it is not likely that that non-diabetic patient will ultimately become diabetic, because then he will have brought things under control ahead of time. That will be preemptive. So can you tell us the goals that the 10-point agenda in our book, Defeating Diabetes, what are the goals we are setting that we are hoping to accomplish, to achieve?
Well, first of all, of course, is to prevent diabetes. We don't want you to have diabetes. We want
if you don't have it already.
Diabetes free. That's the first goal. Now, for those who already have diabetes or pre-diabetes or are worried about their blood sugar, the next will be to, first of all, lower the blood sugar.
Into the normal zone.
Into the normal zone, yes. Because that's the major problem with people who have diabetes, their inability to lower their blood sugar. Then the next steps would be to tackle different aspects of diabetes or different aspects of how the body is able to control the blood sugar and glucose metabolism. And the first would be to reverse insulin resistance. So we discussed how type 2 diabetes, they have insulin resistance. So we want to reverse it. We want their bodies to now be sensitive to insulin again. Then the next would be to improve insulin production by the beta cells. So the beta cells of Langerhans inside the pancreas. Yes. So we'll be improving the production of insulin, efficient production of insulin. We'll also be protecting the organs within the body from the damage that the high glucose levels can cause by giving, we'll be discussing that, of course, in subsequent episodes.
Right.
But there are different ways to protect, because diabetes affects all the organs of the body,
all the
every single
systems.
one of them. And so they have to be protected. And then if there's already damage, we want to address those damages, we want to reverse those, because all of those damages too can be reversed within a reasonable context. So someone has a kidney injury from diabetes, there are things you can do to reverse that kidney injury,
right,
even though it has a reason. Then after that, you want to prevent recurrence. So you do not have diabetes again. We don't want the diabetes to come back again. So we're introducing a plan to ensure that you do not have diabetes all over again, or you don't relapse into having the diabetes.
Quite laudable goals. Yeah, I mean, these are attainable goals. These are goals that can be achieved, actually.
Yes.
If one sets one's mind to achieve these goals, they are possible. They are not far-fetched. They are things that can be done. And the 10-point agenda that we have put together in our book can actually help to achieve these goals. So we are going to dive in right away, maybe because of the limited time we have left for today. We may not be able to go far, but we're going to take at least the first point in the 10-point agenda. In other words, 10 things that every diabetic should undertake in order for them to hopefully reverse their diabetes. I use the word hopefully very carefully because I know that there is no regimen or protocol or treatment model anywhere that can solve 100% of all the problems in the world as far as it relates to diabetes. But we're talking about success rates so that maybe 90% of those who do it can actually get their diabetes completely reversed. And maybe the remaining 10%, if it is not totally gone, but at least they can get it under control and prevent the complications that can arise from diabetes. That's why I use the word hopefully. So, but there's a very high degree, a very high chance that implementing this 10-point agenda can actually help every person to bring things under control or to get rid of diabetes from their body. Okay, and those who are not diabetic, to ensure that they don't get diabetes. And for those who have already been able to reverse theirs, to make sure they don't relapse, there is no recurrence of the situation. Okay, so the first point on our 10-point agenda is what we have tagged neuroprogramming. Neuroprogramming. And that simply means rethinking your beliefs. Rethinking your beliefs. Because you see, belief is powerful. There is what we call the psychosomatic, thing out there, the mind-body connection. What goes on in my mind has a lot of effect and impact as well as implications for my body. See, the body is soma, and then your mind, your psyche. So we call it psychosomatic. In other words, mind-body connection, the effect of what goes on in my mind on my body. Now, my belief system has a way of influencing my actions. And that's why rethinking your beliefs is very key to reversing diabetes or any other chronic degenerative condition for that matter. And so we'll be looking at least 4 major things under this point: rethinking your belief or neuroprogramming. Would you like to start with the first part? What is the first thing that a person has to reorientate himself or herself about their beliefs regarding diabetes? Some people believe, for example, that this thing is hereditary, it's in my genes. I inherited bad genes, diabetic genes from my parents. It's not my fault. I'm innocent. I didn't contribute to this problem, and there's nothing I can do that can change anything, so why bother? What would you like to say regarding that, the hereditary one?
Well, for heredity, I think we discussed that in when we're talking about causes or which one?
Yeah, other factors.
Other factors,
right.
Yes. So, heredity is your genes are a loaded gun. It's your diet and lifestyle that decides if sugar is.
I'll pull the trigger.
So yes, some people might inherit certain genes that predispose them to developing diabetes. Note the word predispose. The fact that you're predisposed to something does not mean that you will eventually
develop
that thing. And so carrying certain genes, I'm a Nigerian, for example. I can decide to carry it on my head that I'm a black Nigerian, and that's the reason for all of my problems in this life. But there are other black Nigerians that are successful and doing very well in spite of being black and Nigerian. So the fact that you have familial traits of diabetes does not mean that you...
The word familial, by the way, means something that runs in the family. Okay.
Yes. Does not mean that you would have or you should have diabetes or that is why you have diabetes. We also established that most people inherit genes as well as habits, diets, lifestyles. And so it's a lot of those diets and lifestyles and habits that actually cause diabetes, not necessarily that they actually have genes that predispose them to having diabetes. At least unlike BRCA1, BRCA2, I'm not aware of any particularly isolated gene that codes for diabetes. So I think that's what I have to say about genes. We are still the ones responsible for diabetes, regardless of what we think might have inherited or not. So
this is where we're going to sign off. See, that's why it's important to understand that information can be life transforming. That's why I keep saying to be informed is to be transformed, and to be uninformed is to be deformed. Because the best prescription is knowledge. What we need is not more medication. but more education. I believe today's episode has been a great blessing to you. We want to particularly appreciate you for spending your Monday evening with us. And for those who will watch the video thereafter, whatever time you watched it, we thank you for watching it. And we want to particularly also welcome those who are first-timers. If today is your first time of joining us on Exposé with Tony Akinyemi, we particularly celebrate you. We welcome you. We thank you. And for the veterans who have been here all the way for donkey episodes, we also want to thank you for remaining loyal. I hope that every episode has been very helpful. One of the things you can do for us is to personally subscribe if you have not done so on our YouTube channel, and to like us on our Facebook page. And then make sure that after watching this, you send it, share. If you are watching on YouTube, there's that share, link there. Just click on share and send the video to as many people as you know. Not only those who are diabetic, as you can see, one of our goals is not only to reverse diabetes, but for those who don't have diabetes, to prevent them from having it. So share this. And we have many more interesting things coming. We have a 10-point agenda, and we have only covered one of the 10 points. Begin with your belief system. Because what you believe will dictate your action. It will dictate what you are willing to do and the price you are willing to pay. I was talking to somebody earlier today, and the person was following my dietary program to reverse her condition. And she was making progress because we were doing blood tests to monitor progress. She was making progress, from about 30%, she was now about 60% better, and we were aiming at, close to 100%. And suddenly she got tired of the kind of diet and lifestyle, and she just threw in the towel and went back to her old way of doing things. And then her numbers, her blood tests began to decline again. Things began to go bad. And so when I spoke with her, I said, look, you have to stick to it. Don't get tired. You have to stick with it because you must get to where we want to get you to. So you keep going and keep going and keep going. Now, it's not about, can I afford to pay the price? The question I ask is, can you afford not to pay the price? If you think about it that way, that's what we call neuro-programming. Can I afford to pay the price? And then I ask you, can you afford not to pay the price? When people say, what if I fail? Then I ask the other side of the question, what if I succeed? See, the way you look at it determines what you will do. And I want you to do the needful, because there is a part for you to play. There is a part for God to play. If you fail to play your part, then you make it difficult for the part that God has already played to work out for you, because it takes two to tango. And our prayer with you and for you is that whatever you are dealing with, whether it be diabetes or any other condition, God will give you a miracle. There will be a turnaround for good, and you will have a testimony of victory in Jesus' mighty name. Thank you once again. Bye.
You can actually reverse diabetes. When you understand diabetes, you understand what it is, you understand how it happens, the risk factors, the causes, and the complications that it can give rise to. Those who already have it, to start putting measures in place to reverse it, or at the very least, to control it. My daughter is a medical doctor and I am a nutritionist. We co-authored Defeating Diabetes Naturally. You'll find it on Amazon.com, and you can also buy hard copies from our bookshop, the Shepherd Stores Limited, on number 18 Shogunde Street, Abule Onibagbo, Ikeja, Lagos, Nigeria.